Hello and welcome to the King Heroes Journey podcast. Sorry for that little bit of a chunky end. I'm riding my son right now. That is my son Liam. I think it's safe to say his name, everybody else's name. So I think the internet pretty much knows who he is. And I'm just going to quickly, before I forget, share a link to his channel in the chat. If you feel to go and sub to him, I'm pressuring him to put more on his channel because he's getting requests for even more material. And I have the great pleasure of having Mr. Ben Balderson on again today. Ben, I've lost count. How many times have I had you on?
Oh, I haven't the slightest clue.
I'm not a counter.
No, me either. If I enjoy something, I do it. If I don't, I don't.
Exactly.
Don't keep track of it too much. Usually I got to be honest. Even if I know when Christy and I got married, so that one's pretty easy because we got married in 2020. So that was a fairly unforgettable year altogether. So it's easy to track that. But when we started dating, I don't know.
Yeah. I know. It's kind of embarrassing. It's one of those strange phenomenons, and when it comes to counting and accounting, and I always just feel that that's evil, when it comes to all the data collectors, and there's just something in it that there's times for it. I'm starting to count doses of niacin, for example. I've been having some good experiences with niacin, but if I don't count to the milligram, or at least the plus or minus 5, then I can get myself in some trouble. I got a Goldilocks going on, so I really had to go through a door to make that happen, but I did it.
The old school druggy use of niacin, right?
What is it? Lay it on me.
Back in the day when guys would have to go take a UA, they would flood their body with niacin, and I mean just take hot amounts of niacin, because then niacin forces you to flush everything out, and you'd take niacin and drink and chug a whole bunch of water, and you'd see their whole body would just turn. Is that me? That is my dad. I am so sorry. Can you call Dad?
That's okay. Okay, hang on.
Here. I'm just going to answer this. Here.
I'll be right. Give me a thumbs up when you're
on an interview, please.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
My dad's, but we do need to answer that. My dad is having a major heart surgery. At this point, apparently they're going to try an experimental thing where they're going to try and replace the main valve going on his arteries is not it's a check valve, so the heart it pushes out, but then it's not supposed to let it come back, so it's a one-way thing, and his is not allowing it to be one way. It's going, what he's pushing out is coming back, and so he's only getting about 20% of his actual blood flow he should. So before this, they used to take and cut that whole chest. That was the one where they cut your whole chest open, take your heart actually out, put a valve in it, put it back in. But now apparently they're going to try this newer thing where they go up the main artery in your thigh and try and just punch it into place, and then the malfunctioning valve will grip onto the new valve, and so we'll see.
Wow. Yeah, I think.
But I apologize, everyone.
Oh, no worries. Not a problem. Yeah, best wishes to your dad. It's amazing how many things work, and then when they don't work, you're like, I was taking that for granted a little bit. So
well, he's got 8 great grandkids now, so
he's done well.
Yeah, he's doing all right, not including the army of grandchildren.
Right. Billingtano, nice to see you, by the way. Artificial valve or pig valve?
It's an artificial valve. It's a mechanical valve, and apparently, supposedly, they have another replacement also that goes behind it, and they can daisy chain these things together if this one ends up going out, which it's not supposed to for however many years.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
supposedly they aren't doing the zipper anymore.
Zipper.
Supposedly
Oh, that's
they're
good.
gonna the in this main artery in the thigh is supposedly gonna replace the zipper method.
There you go. There you go. Well, I wonder if that's not a bad intro to our theme today, that life comes from death and destruction. And there's some twists in there, I have to say, because the hijacking of medical science for what I would call satanic blood ritual, it plays on that truth that we're going to get deep into it. If you're not familiar with Ben, by the way, I just wanted to let you know that you can find him on Rockfin at Odin's Alchemy. So I'm going to drop a link in the chat for you here to go and sub to him. And he's over on Facebook at this link, which is where I see a lot of his posts, which are fantastic. And your newest hobby is debating over on this channel that I can never remember the name of, Deliberating Dog-Faced Dudes.
Yeah, it's a mouthful. We're the three
Yeah.
we're the 3 Ds of debate.
3 Ds of debate. Okay, there you go. There you go. Yeah, I've seen a couple in your formidable opponent. It's kind of fun to sit back and gory at the same time.
Well, we haven't had any particularly contentious debates so far. We're trying to line some out. We've got Jaren's going to come in here shortly, and we're going to debate crypto, not his final experiment stuff, which is obviously a pretty hot, touchy subject, but that is not what we're doing. We're doing crypto and whether crypto is the move to go to, for freedom, things like that, all the things that that's supposed to represent. So Jaren's obviously coming in pro crypto. We're trying to figure out exactly what we're going to debate, but Amon Hillman, the Lady Babylon, who says some very contentious things, obviously. We're looking at getting him. He's going to come in. We just haven't figured out what exactly we're going to debate yet and around what prompt, because obviously a lot of what he speaks about is actually just the interpretation of ancient Greek, and I can't debate him on that. Like, I'm just gonna have to take him, what he says or what somebody else says contrary to what he's saying. I don't know either way. I can't actually substantiate it myself either way.
Yeah, you got to stay in your lane sometimes.
Yeah. So obviously not going to debate him on that subject. And then Andrew Wilson agreed to debate me, but has gotten real weird about that. So I don't know what to say there.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, I'm giving a talk at Anarchapulco this year on the marriage of the opposites. So that's on the theme of alchemy right there. And specifically for dissolving the inner divide, because we see a lot of the outer conflict and it's obvious and it shows up in, bad relationships or even the play of it in debates, which is, I'm not taking that down by any means. And, but we fight with ourselves. We don't really need controllers because we're taking ourselves down every single day. I remember the time I did a little trip. I was just coming out of my deep and dark chemo days. I had been diagnosed in remission. I had half an inch of hair. I got a picture of this I can show people in my Telegram maybe. And I had been invited to a oncology nurses conference to sing because my nurse saw me survive. And it's so rare in her world that she got all excited and said, could you come and sing and speak at this conference? And they were everybody's crying. It's not an international, national conference here in Winnipeg. And they're just all bawling because there's no hope in their work, right? Like it's just to see somebody live through it and against the odds and going against their treatments as well. And then I went home and I started to trip out because I was actually really afraid of this next leg of my journey. It was in some strange ways safer to be a dying person than it was to be a living person with my whole purpose right in front of me, calling me and making demands on me that I didn't think I could fulfill. I found myself at one point with my hands around my own neck. I like literally tripping out, and I wrestled myself to the ground. And I awakened in this moment, and I'm like, what the fuck? What's going on here? Why am I trying to take myself out? And I was able to see this other angle, much more unconscious version of myself that was calling in the death, right? And that's why I had been in that very dire situation. So despite that, that death that I went through, the 3-year, what seemed like battle for my life, did birth, and it created a new world for me, or I created a new world for myself on the heels of dissolving that I was my own enemy, fighting myself. So so let's let that take us into this conversation. Of course, I'm not surprised. James came and welcome James, and he said, "Life comes from death and destruction. That seems like nonsense," he says.
I understand.
Yeah. So
That's,
why don't you dive in
not
right
a
there?
problem.
Yeah.
So we're gonna start out with my favorite way to do it, as in the Norse way. And you look at the creation, and you start out with 3 things. Is you got Niflheim, Muspelheim, and Ginnungagap. Niflheim and Muspelheim are the 2 sides of the masculine, and they're broken apart. They're polarized against each other. So these 2 things naturally are pushing away from each other. They don't want to be next to each other. And then you have Ginnungagap, which is the All Mother, the void, the great yawning chasm. So Ginnungagap pulls at these 2 until she pulls them together. And where she pulls them together, you have the Vesca Pisces. Mm-hmm. So this is your basic sacred geometry. It's expressed in so many other ways that it's not even funny. So the first thing that's going to happen when these 2 things collide together is horrifying destruction. And you're going to take the old order that was there, because that's what this was a perfect order. This was a perfect system that did not change. It stayed exactly the same up until this point. And so the All Mother is the one that brings the destruction first. And through that destruction is where life starts forming. That's where this interaction starts happening between these 2 opposing forces. And in that, when we look at it 100%, the way life is defined is movement, where the lack of movement is death, where that's where things you stop having these interactions, these interchanges between things. And it doesn't matter how very simple you take this down to, whether it's just a very simple chemical reaction. One of the components has to break apart, and so one of them will steal a thing from another thing, which starts a chain of events that will either make a whole new chemical, make a bunch of new chemicals. It'll do all kinds of things. All of this has to start out first with that first breaking, that first destruction, that first death. Even when we look at just the human process, the reason that they call it that they call orgasms little death. And when you look at it, when the sperm and the egg, these are 2 very specific things that each are individual. And it's not till they come together and break and make a third thing, which is going to be the spark that happens, the soul that's coming in. This is going to be where the life is happening. But before that life ever has a home to be in. We need to break apart the old, because the old didn't have life in it. It wasn't ready for that. This is where we start looking at the breaking is what literally caused the conditions for spontaneous generation. And so because this now is ready for life, life is ready to be there, and all of that has to be in motion. It can't be in stagnation. Stagnation is death, motion is life. It's flat out. And we live in this balance between the two things, because you obviously can't have infinite life either. If my plants out here never die, then I can't grow new plants. My garden is full up. I don't have room for new plants and new life. That old life has to break apart, and that new life, no matter what way you look at it, new life is a growth from the old life. It literally will take up the pieces of the old life, and that's what it uses as the pieces to build itself.
Right on, right on. Just going to jump in, and so lack of movement is death. Now, is it that there are two kinds of lack of movement? So one of the things that I'm very tuned in with in the work of deprogramming is that as you're making choices, like, oh, there's a program, I didn't realize I was running that, I'm going to make a new decision, I'm going to let it go. Who is the one making that decision? Is the one who's witnessing it and has enough higher intelligence to see, oh, that's not my beautiful state of being, that's not natural, and then turning the attention back, turning the witness back on the witness, and in that is what I would say is beyond an experience, but because we lack words, it might easily be called another experience of stillness, and within that stillness, there can be no action and no movement, although there will always be something. The blood's flowing, you're going to breathe eventually. You can still the breath for a time, but it's still going to keep moving, all of that kind of thing. And then when more obvious action returns, if you're really established in that stillness of the witness, then it feels like everything's moving, but you're not moving. So this is very different from what you're talking about, that where the lack of movement is death. Do you have anything you want to add to that?
Well, so this is just levels once again, where you're moving from what you're talking about more is moving from an active to a passive. And so there's levels where you can definitely take that into, metaphorically into the same thing. But this is also why they say the orgasm is little death. You're obviously not dying. When you sleep, you aren't dying. You didn't die overnight and become alive in the morning. So some of these things are more metaphorical and just taking it on the level, but you start seeing the same actions happen. And what you're talking about is more of a we're taking an active role, which is live, and then you're taking a passive role. So definitely the things can once again be more metaphorical. So you're correct with that.
Except the witness includes the passive and the active, right?
What's that?
That the witness includes the passive and the active. It's one more step back, right? That it's not affected by the movement. It's not affected by the reception.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is also very interesting, all around. And to answer James' question from earlier, the All Mother is what's creating the movement, the Gununga gap. The two forces are oppositional. They're not going to come together. It's Gununga gap that's forcing them together, these two forces that are trying to push apart. That's also where you end up getting an oscillation between the two. That's what creates the cycles. Sometimes it's more fire side, sometimes it's more ice side. And that's what creates the cycles. And that oscillation is, once again, life. You look at your heart. If you're on a flat line, you're dead. If you up and down, oscillation between the two things, that movement is life. And just the way our terminology works. And 100%, there's things that don't get 100% represented. This is why you look at the metaphors, because there's foibles in our language, without a doubt. That's been as long as history has been, where you had Diogenes, coming in and bringing in a plucked chicken and saying this is a human because it's bipedal and, skin and without fur, and so they had to reposition, or you had to rework the definition. So there's the language in and of itself. Anybody that's ever had a highly spiritual experience to try and explain that, you start understanding the failings in language real quick.
Exactly. With your words, you can only point towards it. And if two people have shared that perspective, then they can use the words somewhat successfully. But yeah, it's all just pointing to, and the words can't give you that thing, which is not a thing.
The word chocolate won't mean anything to you if you didn't ever eat chocolate. You had to have the experience, or else the words don't hold up the way a person would think. They only hold up because we've shared the experience. If you shared the experience, then yes, the word means quite a bit. If you haven't, then no, the word doesn't mean that much. Yeah. And it doesn't really make you understand.
Exactly. And then using that phrase, little deaths, that describes not only that orgasm, which do you think that's like the little death for men and for women? Is that the same, by the way? I just have to throw that in.
100%.
Okay.
If anything, it would be more of a death for a man, I think, than a woman.
Right.
To be honest, like the amount of loss that a man takes in that system, that just in an energetic charge, it's enough to build a civilization. You are dumping one hell of a lot of energy, and just energetically, So I know and part of why most guys want to take a nap right after, I suppose.
Right, literally drains. Yeah. And then so life is full of the little deaths.
Yeah.
Right. Every night you said going to sleep. I had insomnia. I know part of it was probably I was killed in my sleep or something like that, because sleep and death were the same. I remember, I would always fight myself. Okay, all right, you're going to get to bed early tonight, and you're going to, no. And I heard it in my mind one night. It said, go to dead, Beth. I was trying to tell myself to go to bed, but I said, go to dead.
Yeah.
Like this, so it's we've used these experiences as metaphors. On any kind of a spiritual journey, you are going to bump up to things that kill you.
Yeah.
Yet you're come into some new truth. Maybe James is going through it a little bit now, going like, life comes from death and destruction. And it stops you in your tracks on that path of normal thinking and an ordinary life where you could just go along, get along. Maybe it's not full and complete or satisfying in any way, but we had our concepts were alive and we could hang on them, maybe with fingernails. And then something comes along and it's like, oh, that doesn't even exist, or that's not even a thing, or that's an indoctrination of some kind, or you adopted that because it was convenient or easy, or got you the approval of people in your life. And then you have to, if you decide that you like the truth more than you want to stay alive in that way, then you're going to let yourself die to that. And sometimes it's a very big death. What people have to give up, what they have invested themselves in, a lifetime of knowledge, and not just like having the knowledge, but propagating the knowledge and maybe profiting on the knowledge, and all of that kind of thing. That it's so frightening as any kind of a practitioner, where you've really put yourself out there and said, okay, this is the truth. And then if you have that will to keep going, then there will come a time where it or parts of it is going to die.
See, and I would say that a lot of people that have insomnia, not normal insomniacs that have a different condition, but if you sleep well normally, like if I can't sleep throughout the night, myself personally, it's because I have a problem that I was not able to resolve that day. And now I don't want the day to close out because I've got a problem and I don't want that problem to be there tomorrow. And today has to die before tomorrow can be there. Like it can't be today all the time. It does. That's the way it kind of works out metaphorically, but it can't be January 5th. January 6th can't happen until the 5th is done, buried, gone. And that's so many other things all the time in your life, just like you were talking about. In order for me, I certainly am not the person now that I was when I was a young man. And I'm not impressed. Like if I went and met the man that I was when I was a young man, I had potential, obviously, to be who I am. But was I? No. And am I impressed with a lot of the behaviors and things that went on with myself when I was young? Absolutely not. And that person had to quit being that person before this person could be me. And so I had to get rid of that. That had to absolutely, and this is why this is what the metaphorical death in this situation is. And the rebirth is this person who does not do those things anymore. This is you've taken and changed your place in the reactions of the world around you. You said, no, I'm going to start being like this now. And so that thing is no longer a thing. That person literally that was reacting that way is gone.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, can I put you on the spot to be on for just 1 minute? I have to run to the door.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead. And it appears there's quite a bit in the chat, so we'll just go ahead and do that while Beth is gone. Let's see here. Debating about Babylon. No, I don't think I don't know why his name's Lady Babylon. I'm not that familiar with him. Yeah, I don't know. Jaron, it will be a good topic. I'm obviously anti-crypto. I'm an anti-Goldvig person about the land. Oh, didn't get too far with that. All right.
There you go. Yeah, this is Donald. So some people go the other way with if we're on the topic of insomnia at all, that Donald says he sleeps when he gets depressed, and that can very much. It's like, again, it's the pull of death, right?
Because that person wants it to end. Yeah, there is the opposite reaction. I'm a very masculine person, which isn't calling you a woman or anything. I'm not saying that at all, but I'm a hyper masculine. Anybody that's met me absolutely knows I'm hyper masculine. I'm not, which isn't me going around, like that. I'm just I'm having to learn how to be more passive and let things just happen, because especially in ways where as I get older, I've planted the seeds. Now I need to step back and let them grow. And I had to learn, and I learned that as a farmer, and I have to apply that to myself as a person, because my natural state is constant movement, constant intercession. And that needs to not happen. But some people, that's not their movement. Or maybe they just don't even know how to do it. And I do get that, because I get the people that sometimes when they don't have a direction that they can decide on, this is where a real depression and until you can decide where to move, you're going to go into that. And because now you can't move. So I get it, and I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist, but that's just, but yeah, I'm hyper masculine. I always move. I'm a walk it off guy. I will always, like, literally, when I flew off a motorcycle into a tree and shattered my whole left side. I mean, I'm plates and pins. And I got up and was immediately walking and walked that off. And then when I walked into the hospital and I took my shirt and they got my shirt off, they're like, how are you standing? Like, walk it off, man. You stop moving, that's when you die. You just got to walk that shit off.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I can relate to that. When things go wrong, some people, they like go under the covers, okay, sleep it off. Maybe it'll be over when I get up. And I'm like you, Ben. I'm like, oh, problem. What's the action? We're gonna attack this. We're gonna do something. I told a story. Forgive me if anybody has heard this before, but I was sitting in my tiny home, and it was super cold, and I was alone, and I had faced, in our pandemic years that aren't gone, unfortunately, but and I had this fear I was carrying. I was going to die alone in a tiny home. And so I'm sitting there and I thought, okay, you know what, Beth, go right into this fear now. Running from this fear, it's not making it go away. So I'm walking my talk, going into it. And I'm playing out the worst case scenario. It's one of the tools that I teach. And I'm going through all of the gory stuff that my imagination says is going to happen. And I'm going. And I opened my eyes at one point and I realized that the heater went out. And I'm like, oh my fucking God, here I am manifesting my worst fear. The heat's going out, the propane, something, whatever. So I interrupt all that and I get up and I go outside and I'm looking at the tanks and I got wrenches, although I don't really know what to do with them. And and
no, I'm gonna need them though.
Yeah, everybody's sleeping. It's not a big deal. Like I can literally jump in my truck and go to the city. It's not the end of the world, although I can't abandon the house in a frozen state. So what I realized is that had I much more receptively and in a feminine way gone all the way through to the end of the worst case scenario, which is always death. Always death. There's no end to any scenario like that doesn't come to death. You're not being honest with yourself if it doesn't go there. If I had let myself actually die, I would have realized that the thermostat kicked in and said, it's warm enough now. I don't need to run this heater. But because I'm all in like masculine action mode in courage, which seems like your best friend until like there I was, I messed it up. I caused myself grief. I ended up having a cold night because I, turned the tank off and switched to some crappy electric. And it was such a lesson, such an awakening that there's action is you need to get into action so that you can bring your shit up, so you can get into trouble, so you can, become disillusioned with all of the pursuits, or at least most of the pursuits. And then, it's always
people are stuck in the feminine side where they just are like, they'll just sit and watch podcasts all day and take in information, and never go out and live a life and actually have application of the information. So it's absolutely danger on both sides. It's that, again, that oscillation between the two that has to happen. It has to happen.
Exactly. You got it. Yeah. And that's the play, if you could call it, between life and death, that these are, would you agree with this, that they are a continuum? We're not dealing with two things, like the masculine, feminine, maybe.
Both the life and the death are the feminine. That's none of it's got to do with the masculine. Life and death is feminine, is the feminine realm, when it in reality, in truth, because the both these things were static before Ganunga brought them in. This is part of why in so many different mythologies, the feminine has two different names. She's the destroyer and the giver, the life taker and the life giver. That's both things are the feminine. And so when the movement comes, she made that. When the movement stops, that's her too. Like, she decided to stop doing it for you. Like, the masculine, and when the movement stops, the thing is that thing is still there, right? That body is still there. That inanimate dead thing is still there. Just the movement of it has now left. And that's the understanding between life and death. And yes, there is micro movement, because in death, then you got deterioration. But again, from that deteriorated corpse and the decay is where the new life is going to eventually spring up. So again, back to the initial point, that until that destroyed, decayed, enriched, fecund area happens, life doesn't exist. It can't grow in the fire side, because the fire side, everything burns up. Nothing can take root. It can't grow in the ice side. The ice side, nothing can move. Everything's also dead. And so it's only in that Vesica Pisces area created by Gununga Gap where those two things come together, which, as these gentlemen are talking about in the side, with where life comes, and whether it's in the brain and things like that, you understand that, again, there was a third motion. There was fire and ice. It's when those two things came together that a third thing happens. There's still the fire side and there's still the ice side. Those two things fully exist. But now we have a third thing. And that third thing, just like the sperm and the egg, were each an individual thing, and those are both still there in that third thing. All the elements of that sperm were there. All that genetic information is still there. All the genetic information of that egg is still there. But now we have a third thing. And so it's that third thing, that's what's imbued with the soul and the life. That genetic information, that didn't have life in it. And so obviously the life is separate because the genetic information didn't change. The thing those pieces of genetic information can still be separated and exposed. This is how we can understand that you get some things from a mother, some things from the father, blah, blah, blah. We can separate, and those genetic pieces of information are still just what they are. It's that third thing that contains the life, and that life, when it goes away, that genetic information will still be there. Those building block pieces that the life imbued are still going to be there. But the life in and of itself is gone.
Right, right. And you'd think this could be a point that would go without saying, but people really don't. In their minds in general, they're looking at the bag of data, the ingredients, and they're treating that to be life. But like you're saying, before life got there, that stuff was there. After life is gone, that stuff is there. And we have this third element, which is very, very important.
Yes.
That we never put our attention on. And this is, to me, the source of all growth or anything new that could come, is that we can attend this element, especially in a realm that is designed for death. Who is it in the chat said, when you gave life and you also gave death, right? Every child that we bore, we've created their death. Yep. As if, the third element being the one that's created. So yeah, it's it seems to go without saying, and yet if you watch your just normal thinking, how much it's wrapped up in that, people might say, material realm. Because we live in a death cult and we are indoctrinated for death, we might even literally be in a death realm. I can see some logic in that. I can't prove anything.
That's true, but we're also in a life realm. Also true. It's that this is part of where you end up when you start looking at the occult, which most people can't handle. It's not meant for most people. But when you start looking at the occult, where it's all truths or half truths, and from the inside of this realm, that's absolutely true. From the all's perspective, that's everything is true. But understanding that absolutely this is a realm of death, 100%. It's a realm of life. Yeah, absolutely. It's a everything's one. Yep. Everything's separate. Yep. And the way that you reconcile that is understanding that hot and cold only is meaningful to the person experiencing it. So that means that you're inside that experience. So now you're taking a side. You're taking a polarity. You're choosing a position. Even going, I like the room at 80. You've now chosen a position inside of this. So hot and cold are just temperature. And if you step back and you don't take any position on it whatsoever, it's all exactly the same thing. It's just two sides. It's just the polarity. And this is what's represented by the masculine side in and of itself, is that whole thing, the world of ice and the world of fire. That was the masculine. And like I said, polarized against itself. They were literally one thing. And so, but in order to have this experience, they had to have that separation, because without the separation, we can't have the experience. And so, again, that separation, that death, that decay has to happen in order for us to get life. Because without that separation, this whole thing stayed one immobile thing. And then we had nothing. We had no life. We had death. So in order for life to begin, we had to start the decay in order to start the movement. And now the movement's going. And now that that's going, we have this wonderful thing called life, which is a pretty good time.
Yeah, exactly. The more that you let yourself look at death, the more you can enjoy your life. There's another as if paradox that can be reconciled by direct experience, not by thinking about it, not by trying to find the logic of it and arguing the logical point of it. This can be directly experienced if you are brave enough. Because why? We're not dealing in kindergarten here. Like, death is death, pain is pain, loss is loss. You can't say all of these things and then, lose your father, lose your mother, lose your child, lose your own health, lose your livelihood, lose the truth that you thought you had, and not go through some immense pain. It's real. We're in a realm of pain and death in that respect. And then
Respect.
yeah, and people are trained to get away from pain at all cost, and to go towards what they think to be good and pleasurable. And I was just going to jump in. It can be called our original wound, but based on what you just said, it's hard to keep calling that. Is that of separation from the oneness. And so there's one of the programs runs, and it says that you are not one. You must need to want oneness, and therefore, or if not, then you're doomed to be separate. And people also learn to want separation in its inversion. Out of the pain of the separation, they actually want that, right? Babies who maybe were separated from their primary caregiver, their mother, and then they're brought back to the mother, they can actually reject the mother at that point. You think they'd be so hungry for the mother, but they're like, so young we learn this.
Both things are very natural. Both things are very natural, whether you want the oneness or you want the separation. Again, they're both, and both things need to happen. If the child doesn't separate from the parent and go out and forge its own life, then it's going to just be part of this life. Some children, though, are going to continue being part of this life, and this is where you get traditions. And this is, like I said, this is a micro and macro. You end up seeing this whole thing just carried out metaphorically over and over again. And you have traditions built up that are things that you did over and over and over again. And then you have the kids that are, instead of being the more stable, they want to break off and go this way. And you really need both things, because if you had kids if you never develop a tradition, like in today's world where we've completely, in the last 3 generations, crapped on all tradition, everything that our great grandparents did, we have zero interest in living any portion of a life that they did or maintaining any of the things that they did. Most of us are completely separated from it. And because of that, all the skills and things that they went through, we've lost access to that. And with the lost access to that, we now have a dependency on this new system, which so many people, because they've chucked in on this, are going to try and maintain, which once again, this is going to be the stability. And it's just a very natural thing. It's a back and forth. And when you look at it again, all things are true. We are all, the togetherness. The way I've been wanting to explain it is with light. All light is white light. That's true. All light comes from white. White is all the colors. That's the fractalized version. So red comes from white, blue comes from white, but red is not blue, red is not green, red is not even orange. Like, so we can take a lot of understandings from that all of that descends from white light. So yes, we're all a piece of that, where every bit of it is descended from that white light when you look in. So we're just the fractals of this energetic thing.
Exactly. Yeah. One of the chants I used to sing that's on my recordings is the mantra Om Purnam. And it basically means that the whole is whole. You cannot take anything from the whole that will not be the whole. What you take from the whole is also whole.
Yeah.
So that's the reality of it. Unfortunately, the programming of it, because its instructions are to want and need and lack and fear the lack. Then you spend the whole life trying to get this, what you think you don't have, but it's a lie. The program lies to you. It says you're not whole. You're not a fractal of the whole. And so we spend the whole life trying to, glue ourselves. I remember there was a day where I just was like, oh, there's no glue. I can't get any glue here. Everything comes together and it comes apart. And and then coming to that and recognizing the programming of it that just keeps, if I could just become one, and you can't get there because you're already there. It's a lie. Yeah. But you have to see that lie firsthand. You can't think of that lie and get anything. If you don't see the lie operating, then you can't really make any new choices about it. So that's why I'm a broken record.
But like I said, you have people that are fully on the other side. They're all about breaking all traditions, everything else, forging a new thing. And you actually see that happen in cycles throughout humanity also, because there's different time periods where when you see one religion crop up, new religion that actually has some bite to it, you'll actually, if you study it out inside a 10 or 10-year period or so, you can find a bunch of them that all, like when Mormonism happened, there was like 6 other offshoots that actually took bite and also shot up. You see these movements like that all happen kind of at once, because in the greater cycle of our civilization, there's also this movement between breaking from the old and maintaining the old, where it's again, life and death. You have to things are going to grow new, things are going to die off old, blah blah blah, and you have this back and forth. And you see societally that happens quite a bit, where again, new religions will crop up all over the place all at once.
Yeah, so interesting how they're, when say an organic movement really does happen, and that does happen, and something new is born, although they say nothing new under the sun. You put things together in a new way, and then you get the wave of the after wave of that, trying to maybe co-opt that, maybe imitate that, maybe we see this a lot in this so-called truth movement, and there's it, like there was a break from the old, but then it becomes, it's like that new thing, they wanted to become the old, or I'm not sure exactly what I'm trying to say here, but
they can't help it. That's the saying, just the saying, there's nothing new under the sun, tells you that everything's a recycling of the old, no matter how you shake it. We live in a sealed container. All the elements are already here. We don't get new ones. New things we can't have unless we break up and kill this old system and have a completely new system, which then that's if we brought in a new element that had nothing to do with the way this system works and it interacted in this system, it would definitely cause death and destruction. 100%. There's some things that no matter what you do, no matter how micro level you have to take it down to, suffer anytime you have a change like that. But then you also have nice things that happen, like new life that happens, but that also comes from that. But in this current setup, you have the elements that are there. So it's just a recycling of the same thing over and over and over. And then there's now where things get interesting is when you are able to have a grip on that pattern on a lot of different levels, from micro up to macro. And when you can do that, that's when you start moving entirely differently in this place, because you quit fighting this place. You start looking pretty much magical, because you're not trying to ice skate uphill. You're the dude skating downhill all the time, it seems like. And that's just, you're moving with the movements of it. You're understanding that there's a season for everything, and you're just doing what you should be doing in that season. You're the person sleeping when you should be sleeping, and then you wake up fully charged up and energized and like, oh yeah, now I'm ready for this thing. And every time you do the right thing at the right time, you're magically ready for that next thing. And if you know that next thing's what's coming, like, it's as simple as, I know when I get up in the morning after I go to bed, when I get up in the morning, the first thing I'm going to want to do is, it's going to be cold as hell. So I'm going to want to pull on my pants, and I want to, in my hoodie, because we don't run any heat at night at all here. So in the morning, whatever the temperature is outside, that's what it is in my house. And the window's open usually above us, because we like to sleep with the fresh air coming in. So when I pull that blanket aside, oh yeah, you're awake. And first thing I'm gonna want to do is quick flop my hoodie on to cover up my broken left side, so the metal don't get cold, and get my pants on quick and my boots. So of course all those things are right here, right next to me. It's not magic. I know that I'm gonna need them when I get up, after I wake up, after I've slept all night. You just start setting yourself up for the next thing. And when you can start taking that to much more macro levels, and understanding that, no different than, okay, well, I only do that thing though with this hoodie and all that in the wintertime. I don't do that in the summertime. So blah, blah. Now we've added more things. And the more you can stretch that out, in these controllers that we're talking about, those people, they have a very high grasp on the movements and how things are going to work. When you look at it again, just like with the start of these religions, look at even politically. All of a sudden, the United States suddenly made a movement to hard conservatism. What's Canada doing right now there, Beth?
Yeah, it's about.
Are they moving to conservatism? Are they bailing on liberalism? And
yeah,
is it predicted that all the liberal people are about to lose in this October election, and that's part of why Trudeau is resigning, because they're scrambling to hope that they can not have a complete red wave like they did in the United States?
Right, and they're not scrambling at all, because they've already engineered this flip.
But that's the controllers. Now we're talking about the higher controllers.
Right.
You got to don't talk about that right now, because you're just you got to put yourself down into this, and so you understand that this movement, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. We're going to go from a more conservative mind to a more liberal mind as a society. It's just going to happen. Now, if you as a person, as the controller who's above that, starts taking advantage of it, now you take and make your movements. If I want my movement, the action I want to happen, to be conservative, something that will happen during a conservative time, now I'm going to try and employ that during the conservative time. If it's something that'll happen during the more liberal time, I'm going to try and employ that. So that's where the brilliance comes in, is not fighting these currents. It's using each side of the current. That's fucking brilliance right there. Like, how do yeah, we don't like what they're doing, but you got to recognize the brilliance of it, that these guys are taking advantage of both sides of the situation. They're like, oh yeah, today the tide's right now, the tide's coming in and I'm going to do this, and the tide's coming out and I'm going to let it do this, and you're taking advantage of both. That's not and so these people are brilliant, but the motion in and of itself is always going to happen. Always.
Yeah, I just have to throw in quickly that genius and psychopathy often go hand in hand. Right? Yeah, that's a whole other subject. Like, who are these people? But yeah, this is so many beautiful things that when it comes to also in that there's nothing new. What there is, I observe this all the time, and get excited about it and interested in this, how there can be a new combination, which is even statistically, say when a baby is born and looks like the dad, that statistically is not that probable, given the infinite amount of variation that is possible in that being. Every time we get a new season, it's like, yeah, it's winter again, but it's somehow manages to be very different every time. And the way that the spring comes in, or the timing, you started talking about timing, that is definitely one of the gifts of the alchemist archetype, to read timing. And some people get into like, oh, spiritual concepts. Oh, I'll just wait when it's right to be. It's going to be, or when it's meant to be, it's going to happen. It's like, no, it's much more active, where you're studying and observing.
So Facebook should be helping people with this, because basically almost every year, like here, it's very odd for us to get a snow. We get about one a year. It's pretty much the same week every year. It's at an odd time, and all of a sudden we'll get a weird snow, and I'll wake up and, oh yeah, memory on Facebook. Oh yeah, it blizzarded this time last year. Oh, my truck broke down, and I had a bad breakdown this time last year. Over and over, it should be, you start, but the smart thing is when you start preparing ahead of time for these things, so they don't bother you. You can actually even not only just prepare so they don't bother you, you can do things to take advantage of them.
Yeah, exactly. You can get ahead of the curve. Yeah. Thanks to you. I just have to report that I won't be wishing everybody a happy fake New Year anymore. Because but that's my take on it, that the new year was at the beginning of the astrological year in March, when there's an obvious springing forth of new life, and then we have this time to prepare. We see that coming, and whether it's your garden or what animals you're going to prepare to, you can, like, let's see some things coming. That's the beauty of having lived a few of the seasons, and then you can get smarter in your timing.
And then you start looking at, again, this is what the controllers do. You start finding things like, oh, well, this is on 100-year floodplain, so every 100 years, this whole area floods out completely. Well, okay, now what can I do that works in conjunction with that? Now, for them, they do things like land turnovers. They sell everything. And on that 100, say if I was some family real estate business, every time that cycle happens, I would buy up a bunch of land right after it happens. Then I would, as things are cheap and there's rebuilding, and I'm going to own everything, the prices of everything will start going up, and I'm going to own a whole bunch, so I can sit back for a second, look at where the new prominent areas are going to be, start selling things piece by piece, making a whole bunch more money, waiting for that new one. And I know that even though at the end of this 100 years, I'm not going to own really anything, it's all going to come up for sale here shortly thereafter anyways, and I'm going to own it all again. And so now I'm just taking advantage of the cycle. I'm selling when it's high and I'm buying when it's low. And this is what they're doing in so many ways, especially when you look. Here's where the true break came in. And the subject can get real ugly and deep. But you see where they've tried to break up the family. And I'm not even talking about just the nuclear family, because to me, the nuclear family is even just a breakup of the family.
Exactly.
Where we used to traditionally, like everybody in a village basically was related. And that made it a lot easier to want the benefit for the whole village, because everybody in the village is your people. Like, yeah, of course. Stop it, honey. Of course I want the village to come up. I don't want anybody in the village to be harmed. They're all my peoples. And as soon as they started breaking that apart, and making it so we had to move to other areas, and that became a real big thing, that took all of that weight, took all that stability away out of it. And so they maintained it though, where their kids have all the memories of, they make sure to instill everything their family's ever done. They're trained to do it. They don't go to normal crappy schools. Like, they get all, and honestly, I think they eventually lost their way with that too, and started pawning their kids off into private schools and whatnot. And so they lost their way with it too. And then these kids don't actually want to hold to the tradition then, because they weren't brought into it. And super interesting. And you see that, like, a lot of the worst characters for those families are always their kids. Their kids are the ones that are tearing apart those empires. You're on mute.
Oh, sorry. Thanks. Yeah. With, like, how does the thing go? It's that hard times create strong men. Good times create weak men create hard times, kind of thing, and it just, even back to the investment analogy about how, we hear the logic of what you just said, like I think Billy Tano said it somewhere, someone said something, sorry, I'm missing that. And so the logic is, buy when it's low and sell when it's high. I mean, no one could argue with that logic, but the masses don't do that, because why?
No.
They're not looking ahead. And right, they might see the destruction of today and be
pick a team. They pick a team. Like, if you're the NFL, all you want is the NFL to do better. You don't care whether it's the Raiders, you don't care whether it's the Cowboys, all that. You want the NFL to do better. They now, if you're picking a team, which is good for the NFL, if the Raiders do great or whatever, then that's, good for them. The NFL takes advantage, takes full advantage. But for you, when I don't know who's the against the Raiders. Nobody here knows who's against the Raiders. Whoever's against the Raiders, them people, they're like, oh, the Raiders win. Oh, this sucks. Hey, you just got to be the person taking advantage that doesn't care which team, because you're just down with the NFL or whatever you can metaphorically take that transition to. These people that are, you got to stop. I'm on a show. No.
Cats are synonymous with persistence.
Yeah. Well, and it's like, it won't just sit there and take it just, offhanded petting. Like, no, I want your attention drawn to me.
Exactly.
Right?
Oh, it's worse when you pat without attention.
Yeah.
You might get injured.
I got a couple that'll do that, because they know I'm on a show, and if I get irritated, they'll behave about it. But this one's being a stink.
Fun.
Yeah, I'm down with the NFL. I wasn't trying to promote that in any way. Like I said, I don't even know who is against the Raiders. Like, they've got to have some team that they hate or something. I don't know.
It's why it's why they need to continually go for our loyalty. right? Another quality that gets, because we do have that ability to be loyal, and there's a lot of good reasons to be loyal. But then when you start being loyal to a football team or a brand or you know, a team this against a team that, and that's why personally, I just, I'm a classic non-joiner.
Yeah.
I go where there's good and where there's food and something to grow and nourish myself. And then
This
if
is a
it's
break
not,
to tell everybody I have free kittens.
yes,
They're
okay, okay,
abused.
here, let's get a
Like this
close up.
one's one-eyed. It's
Oh,
one-eyed.
you only got one eye.
Yeah,
Oh,
and one leg.
so cute.
In the arms of
Oh,
an angel.
you're trying to make him look pathetic so that we come and get him. Oh, pretty sweet. And
It's not
another.
bad at all. Come get free. Take some free cats. Yeah. Shut up, Hooker. We don't want more free cats. That's what she's calling out. That's what that noise is. Oh, no more. Is this one yours?
Yeah, exactly. Billing tunnel.
Our
Yes.
vet moved. Our retired, and nobody bought out the vet. We haven't had a vet for like 2.5 years, 3 years. I would have gotten the cat fixed.
Right. Got it. Yeah, you'll have to learn how to snip yourself or something gory like that. Yeah, cats are good until there's 20. Welcome, Thor at the door. Nice to see you. Glad you're here. I was stalking your Facebook yesterday.
Steve!
So what about when it comes to alchemy in the lab? This is, I think, the primary place that you see this, right? Now, you can't create life in the lab. This I don't think anybody's accomplished. They try, maybe clone it. But yeah, what's your perspective there?
So the very first one and the easy one that most people can understand is you should start out with something like the Archetypes of water, which is literally, and I understand that. Is the background thing killing the cat at least, or can you hear the cat screaming for some D?
We can hear the cat, but it's not bothering me. So
Okay.
just go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, good. So with the Archetypes of water, you take water and you're literally just setting up a terrarium. And inside there, you're just, when you do that, when you encapsulate it and seal it, a series of events is going to happen. And you just need to get a microscope to see this happen. So I understand that and this is kind of a crusher for the whole Morgellons community, but I'm not sure how they differentiate between the Archetypes of water and what they're calling Morgellons.
Can you define Archeus, by the way, please?
It's just, I don't know what that exact definition of that is. I just know that that's what they called it.
Okay.
I don't speak that language. Steve, love Steve. Polly. But in the Archetypes of water, you're going to just catch water and ferment it. And in that fermentation, and you're not adding anything to it, you're going to let the water just start fermenting. And all this life will start appearing inside of this. And as you watch it, especially if you have, it's nice today with the computer microscopes, because you can just literally throw this, underneath the microscope and just let it go and watch it like a damn TV program. Cat just went in the trash. Trash lid was not as aligned as the cat thought. Not this one, of course, but this life just starts forming, and then, of course, other life forms, and the one life will start eating off the other life, and other life will form, and you'll just see this whole civilization and this whole process of life that happens where things form, eat the other things, new things come, eat those things, new things come, eat those things, and that just keeps happening over and over. And stop with the butt in my face. Over and over again. And this is just all you're doing is setting up a controlled environment. And inside of that controlled environment, there's a certain amount of energy because nothing's coming and going. And that thing is just transforming over and over and over again. But just like I was talking about earlier, there's only certain elements inside there. So only certain things can happen. Unless you're adding new elements to this system, you're set with the number of things that are going to happen and number of things that are going to appear. When you look at a larger terrarium, like everybody I'm sure has seen the memes that go around of the dude that's like had the same terrarium for like 60 years or something, and he added water to it one time when it was only like 5 years old, so like 50 years or something. This terrarium's never been touched. Well, there was certainly changes that happened inside of it. There was old life, there was new life, and inside that there is, to some degree, because the new life is building itself off of the old life, to some degree there is a boundaries of what you could be. It's not going to be what the old life was, but the new life also set in certain bounds, because it can't be that much different from the old life either, because you can only remix the same components in so many different ways, to get so many different things. Like, I understand, like my diet, I'm a vegetarian and I love cheese. And so, but there's a certain amount of vegetables that I'm good with. Like, I'm not good with everything. I don't do overly well with beans. I don't do well with corn. So there's a number of things I don't do well with. So a lot of it is your cruciferous vegetables. So your broccoli and your cauliflower and blah, blah, blah. And well, that's as pizza, that's one, or like Christy was making fun, like our macaroni and cheese. Like, macaroni and cheese is all those things, because we just put in peppers and broccoli and asparagus and then cheese and macaroni. And literally that same list happens with the potato soup that we brought, except for there's potato broccoli soup. So it's almost the exact same components, but it's not the same. It's not the same at all. It's all the same components, but it's not the same thing. And she's just like, and in her mind, she's like, well, I wouldn't eat the same thing twice. It's like, we're like, it's not the same thing. What are you even talking about, lady? This is macaroni and cheese. This is broccoli and potato soup.
Yeah.
Delicious and delicious.
Yeah. I think, a little bit, I've made some really big changes to my diet. And so one of my main requirements for food was almost infinite variety. And every meal would be different in some way, although I can eat leftovers. And now I've gone to much more, like way fewer ingredients. It's way less time in the kitchen, by the way, way simpler shopping. I don't need the vast majority of the grocery store by any means, and maybe don't even need that, thanks to farmers. And yes, so that variety is different. I've actually learned that part of that need for variation was addiction. And so I've been able to get myself, and I'm not recommending this to you or anybody, but I was able to get myself off of that addiction, which is very helpful. And it's simplified things and turned eating into more just eating, because I need to eat, and that's it. It's not as much of an emotional fulfillment process anymore.
But this is, again, just going to be part of the cycle. So even inside your family, at one point in time, like this, we know this as a people. Like, when people move to a new land and start consuming foods they've never consumed, sometimes you get sick, sometimes you don't. Some of those things you're good with, some you're not. And we live in this interesting time where we have access, the more common people, even the poors, have access basically to things that from across the world. You can wake up living in Toronto and get cumin that's from India with no problem. Problem.
Exactly. And berries all winter long. And, the berries aren't actually the best for you, but nature already designed that. They come once a year. So it's a special treat. and you
Yes.
gorge yourself, and then they're gone, and you don't have to, yeah, exactly.
And I think we were more meant to be kind of seasonally monoculture, not necessarily mono eaters, but more seasonal eaters with some preparation, obviously. And so I think that's where your diversity came from. But inside that, I don't think most people didn't have access to that kind of diversity. You ate what you had access to, and it's only through our modern culture, which is only the car has not been a big deal or widely owned and used for most of us except for a very short time. And even before that, trying to get large quantities of these things to areas, we had to develop refrigerated shipping to get a lot of these things and whatnot. Like, this is, for us to have access to anything besides what's locally grown is very odd in humanity's history. And I contend that 100% that, like, part of the reason that we're reacting to the foods that they're producing now that never existed, and they are fake foods. I'm not trying to say that they aren't, and I'm not trying to agree with that in any way, shape, or form. But I think that part of why we're having such heavy reactions to them is because this is the first generation to ever eat them, or second. Like, we aren't seeing generational effects till just now. Like, it wasn't.
But we've inherited the weaknesses. That's the problem.
Right. And so we're just now seeing the generational effects. This is why you're supposed to. This is why when they're doing the studies, like, part of why they do, like, mice, because mice can generationally reproduce, where not only did you have a mama rat, the baby can grow up, reproduce, have babies, those babies grow up, reproduce, and you can see generational effects of things over a fairly short duration. But that's still only in a rat or a mouse's genetic makeup, which is not a human's. For a human, for us to see the generational issues and traumas caused by things, just the food alone, again, the things a lot of people are eating, I'm not saying that they're food, but our genetically, we haven't even figured out how to deal with it yet, because we haven't been eating them long enough. It's only since the 50s and 60s that we started having these real heavily processed, everybody can go to a store and buy whatever it is that they want. Well, that's not that long ago. That's my parents. So we're starting to see so many problems in our generation and our kids' generation. Well, this is just our reaction to that, and we're going to find out which things are good and bad. And we are, obviously, all the ones that they're making out for the most part are bad. But again, generationally, it takes a long time to figure those things out, because things got to be passed on. We got to again and again, and then the Lego system starts reconstruction because we added a new piece in here. That's just like that guy's terrarium. If he took and threw a new thing in there, and that thing managed to take life, it would definitely cause problems in there. It would cause new things and new beautiful things, but other things would die and have problems. There's no doubt about it. And no matter what way it is, this is part of why so many states are funny about whether you have, they go and check your boat to make sure no whatever is on the bottom of your boat getting ready to go into their lake that doesn't exist in their lake now, that's now going to cause problems in the ecosystem of this lake. Like, we're starting to learn the delicacy of that on a micro level, but on a macro level, we've done so poorly on tracking this kind of thing that it's hard to grasp where we are in that.
Yeah, good points. Let's go back to water, because some people are positing that water is life, and that the consciousness, and you were talking about how, and I'm assuming you were talking distilled water starts to attract the process of fermentation or the ingredients of fermentation. Is that
rainwater? Distilled water is not going to do anything.
Distilled won't. And rainwater is not distilled water? Some people say they're the same.
It is. Rainwater is kind of distilled. It is. It's pretty good, but no, it's not distilled. Rainwater doesn't have similar to distilled water. It's probably not got a lot of salts in it, which they call electrolytes in that instance, because it's the salts are set in the your electroconductivity level is maintained by salts. Pure distilled water doesn't carry electricity. It's actually insulator, and it's the salts.
Right. So what's your take on that water is life?
Well, water kicks off the process. So the water, and in a lot of ways, this is part of why the water's taken in the occult worlds is the very feminine. So anything that's fluid, and I would use the word fluid myself instead of water. So fluid is typically considered feminine. So when you look at the alchemical trio of salt, sulfur, and mercury, salt is not fluid, sulfur is not fluid, mercury is fluid. It's that fluid element in between that's allowing the transition of these other pieces. So when you look at it, like when you're doing the great work, and this is something that gets left out in a lot of occult books that I would talk about, the alchemical process, the only thing in there that's acting as the feminine is the mercury. It's not feminine, but it's acting in that capacity because something in here, anytime you take and you isolate something down, it starts breaking down into component pieces, and you can start finding the same thing, over and over again. So even though it's a masculine thing, it's acting in a feminine manner. So it's opening up the salt and allowing the transition of the sulfur into the salt, where now the salt's imbued with the sulfur. And so you understand from that the salt and the sulfur were always one thing. And so because it's making that movement, it's working in the feminine way. And so metaphorically, that's acting feminine. I don't disagree. But all the fluid things, not just water, are going to allow that to happen. So that's going to be fluid things. And I 100% agree that, and this is part of why the mercury takes on the representative metaphorical feminine, even though it's a male figure, you see feminine aspects to it because metaphorically it's doing the feminine action. And so you have the two masculine components, and agreed, when rain comes, then it allows those two things to happen and start moving and combining. And this is now the three things, all those put together, because the water in and of itself was required to allow these things to come together. But if those things weren't there, the water wasn't life either. So, and honestly, the water is also not life. It's the new combination of these things. So the water allows this movement. And like we talked about with the baby, you wouldn't call the sperm life. You wouldn't call the egg life. You wouldn't call either of these things life. But now when they combine, there's this whole new third thing, which includes a whole spark, a flash of life, where this thing's now got this third thing that's been created out of these other pieces, is now alive. The life in and of itself is a separate thing, though, because again, this thing that was created, when it died, all those component pieces are still there, but something's gone, something's missing. That something is that soul, that energy, that life that's now gone.
Right. And then, so what about that water is conscious?
No. So there's a lot of people, well, they claim water has memory. And so it doesn't. Now, if you take, and this is what this comes from, is just a real looking at Emoto's work and not necessarily thinking about it. When Emoto went out and first did his experiments, his very first thing was he went around and got water from all these different areas and then flash froze them. And they came out with very complex, pretty amazing designs, you know, depending on the area that he got it from. So that's amazing. Then his next step is I want to start seeing if I can affect this. In order to get that to happen, he distilled the water. So your one experiment's not distilled water, the other one is. You've removed the salts out of the water. The salts were the memory. And then when he was doing this new experiment, he was putting it in there and he was capturing a flash freeze of these things. So you understand the way a system works then is, once again, the salt is a hard thing. Nothing can enter salt. It's a crystal. You can't write into a crystal. You can't take information out of a crystal. I know a lot of people like to say that, you know, in the psychic shops or whatnot, but you just can't. It's a very hard sealed thing. Now, but what you can do is then liquidate that into water. Now, water does this other super neat thing where it makes cats go away. If I had a spray bottle, so it shit. It will open up that salt, and now whatever is in that salt is that vibration, that literal energetic vibration, is now able to be seen because that salt's been dissolved into the water. That information was written into the salt. The salt's the one setting the tone here. And so it's through the water that sulfur, which is the other side of the salt, is able to pass. When you're looking at it in this manner, it's information. So the information's a pure energy, and we have a storage system, your hard drive, which is your salt, and you need a thing to see it in between. So you have your whole operating system that allows you to access your hard drive where this information's written, and you're the sulfur that's on the sulfur side doing the just information, just the etheric thing of it, and transferring it through these two things. Yeah. It's like they imitated life when they created this whole system.
Right. What do you think of this? That that water doesn't have memory or consciousness, but it holds memory. That's
exactly
an accurate way to say it. Good.
That is exactly right.
Nice. Okay. So yeah, that doesn't destroy that whole paradigm. Doesn't have to die. Right.
Yeah. I'm not. Like he said, it's a subtle distinction. Mm-hmm. But again, for once you start really looking at things and breaking them down, that's a very important thing to understand, that the water then is the element that's allowing the transition of the information. The salt is the thing that is storing the information. So that's super interesting, right? And then understanding, though, also, and this is where it breaks down. Like, I did an excellent show with Emily Moyer where we talked about this. Okay, so then you understand that with what Emoto did, that means you can do like a ghost, right? Because like if he had melted that water and then tried the experiment again in 10 minutes, it wouldn't have produced anything like that, because the water has lost. It didn't really have a memory. You're just like I can, blow on water. After I saw it while it's happening, and then it's gone. I can't prove or say or look at the water and see that that's there anymore. That movement is gone. And so, but if you flash freeze it, well, now it's kind of like almost ghost written in there, right? And so you think about, like, in the context we were talking about was with sugar. And you look at how crazy, you need to stop. how crazy detrimental sugar is to people's mental abilities, their social abilities. And it's not just us. The mainstream understands this too. I heard like a 2.5 hour dissertation on the behavioral studies of just taking away sugar from teenagers, and on a mainstream radio station. I was rolling along. I was like, well, I'll listen to this. Like, so
what were the
you
findings?
understand that also. Well, you imagine the sugar, as they're refining it, is in a liquid state because it's soluble. And this is how they're getting out all these other components, is while it's in this liquid state. Now you can try and separate out these other things. I use the same technology myself. Now, when I'm making products, I take and typically I put, when they're in that liquid state, I take, and on the sides of my things, a lot of times I'll put this, which means joy. Or if it's a healing thing, I'll try and put healing things or whatever it is, and to try and promote the energy of the thing that I'm wanting to do. But you imagine that these people that don't necessarily have the most, wonderful of intentions, that they also do this same thing. So like you take sugar, I guarantee you them vats that's sitting in during that whole process that they're flowing through, and right before it goes into it, them crystallization vats, I guarantee it has symbology all around it, all in it. And all of that is basically flash freezing because into that sugar. And I guarantee it is.
Right. Fascinating. Yeah, because a lot of death comes from sugar. Yeah, it's fascinating because I've been mostly off sugar, and then Christmas comes around, and I bought a few treats, and I didn't eat them, and nobody wanted to eat them, and it was fine. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, I feel like a shortbread, and I had two, and I'm like, just felt pretty good and hungover from that. It's a little shocky, like, what have I done, kind of thing. I managed to get to the other side, but yeah, that's a kind of what they don't call it white death for nothing.
Yeah, I don't really use sugar. We use honey for almost everything. And there was a time period, I'm not as strict about it anymore, but still don't eat very much. And at one point in time, I bet I went a year without eating any sugar. And it was when Christy and I had first gotten together, and I went, and I really like blood oranges. And where I'm from, I'd never even heard of them. And I was like, so then I seen a blood orange soda, and it was cane sugar, like that Bundaberg Australian, like imported. It looked pretty nice, pretty good ingredients in it. And I was like, nice. So I bought 2 of them and I drank them. I woke up at 2 a.m, just rolling side to side. Oh, my stomach hurt so bad. So angry.
Yeah, sugar is sugar, however you boil it down. Honey or any source. Obviously, some sources maybe have nutrients more than others, but it's not pro-life by any means, and yet we'll die without a certain amount because all of our food has glucose in it.
That's a different, and mainstream science doesn't understand that yet. Just like they don't understand that not all components are equal. So it's like it's the most interesting thing, because things can literally be exactly the same chemically, and they're not the same at all. They don't react the same. There's a more of an understanding that we don't have yet of an element, a spiritual element, which I, as an alchemist, I'm committed to that. Like, I'm all about this. But I also don't pretend like I understand how it works. Why? Because it's very odd that the actual molecule of sugar can be exactly the same, but the source it's derived from, if one of them's a crap source and one of them's a good source, 2 entirely different effects on your body. Your body don't like the ones that are done from the crap sources. Your body has very natural pathways and things that align with that, and if you deviate from that, It's really wild the way your body just knows and it doesn't react anymore, right? And it's super interesting. Like they've been trying for years and years to do this, to perfect this art of making things that fool your body. And every time there's just horrifying side effects. And I understand that they need to slightly alter the allotrope of the molecule in order to patent it. But even if they don't alter the allotrope, it don't work the same.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like the cannabis pill, that don't work like smoking cannabis. We all know it. Everybody knows it. Mm-hmm. So that I don't. It's an interesting thing. So there's obviously more to the story. Like Paul Harvey's up there waiting for us. He's like laughing. He's like, and this is the rest of the story. Like, you know, we're not hearing all of it, and they don't know it.
Right, exactly. I mean, we have such a limited view of, we're like, oh, ingredients, and then you got the thing, and it's like, no, you got way more complexity at the level of the life going on there. What was I just going to ask you? So for the person that, you know, there was somebody in the chat, God bless them, and I don't know if you're still here, maybe they bailed, but you know, they just didn't want to accept. And I'm only going to use it as an example to represent how, you know, a lot of other people might also feel, is that they don't feel that life comes from death. They don't feel that. And we've been trained to hate death, and we call in the death through our hatred. And so how does life change when you have this perspective? What is this going to give that person that
actual spirituality?
Mm-hmm. Reality.
Your whole problem is that you're in that you only live once. This actual life that you have right here, right now, is the only thing for you. You don't understand that you're part of a whole greater thing, that the all and the all father and the and Odin and all these other different levels between have been watching for longer than we can imagine. We're just part of that whole process, and we're still here. We're still around. It's only when you lose that spirituality of understanding that I'm not, this carbon body is not me. I wasn't the sperm or the egg. Again, the life, the thing that really I'm representing, was neither of those things. When I die, all the pieces are still going to be here. It's still going to be there, but I'm not going to be there anymore. Like that's just how that works. But that doesn't mean you're gone. Like what? When again in this terrarium, nothing leaves that terrarium, nothing enters it, and it's existed and recycled itself for years and years. All those things are there. They come back. The conditions, today's not its day anymore. They're looking at things from a very small, inside this sphere thing. They're caught in the polarity. You can't convince them that hot and cold are the same thing, that it's just temperature, because they're living it. And they're like, but the fuck you say, if it gets below 70, I am it is cold. Like you can't convince them that there's a bigger thing, and then to convince them that there's cycles, and without these cycles that certain things, other things can't happen. You know, California, if we don't have fires, there is a abundance of species that require fire to propagate in order to grow new life. Where I'm from originally, the Dakotas, and it freezes, there's a lot of seeds that if they don't go through a hard freeze, they are not going to work out for you. They need everything to die. And then the first thing that's going to happen when new life comes, that perfect seed that was stable is going to break. Destruction. And from that destruction springs life. It's really nice. But you know, no matter what you want to think, and because you're the one living life right now, you don't want to be the beginning of a new life, which is the end of you. So you're tied to your ego of right now severely, because the ego is the thing right here, right now, that people can touch, this thing. But if I was to die right now, this thing would still be here. It would still exist, but I would be gone. I would be elsewhere. That's okay.
Yeah.
That is okay.
Yeah.
It's a big journey. This
Exactly.
was a very short piece of it.
Yeah, if you say go back to a little bit where we began, it's the identification with that which is constantly changing.
I want to hear about your t-shirts and weather, Michigan boy.
Yeah, so just to finish that,
Sorry.
it's the identification with that brings about the pain and the aversion to it. We're attached. We think we're attached to life, but that's twisted. We think we have an aversion to death, and that's all twisted due to programming. So I do highly recommend people, at least desire to get their head straight, and not just their head, but all of their experience, so that they could, in fact, operate in reality. I want to make sure and let people know, by the way, that tomorrow is the last day that I am offering a Hero's Journey archetype reading to get a sense of the reality of where you are. Not everybody wants that. They like to go ahead in the more the illusions and less about the reality. But the people around me, they tend to like reality more. And so if you book a reading with me, an archetype reading, which I have rarely done. I got inspired to do that. Then if you do it by tomorrow, there's an extra bonus of 8 archetype cards that are newly designed and refined. And there's 2 pages, and you've got questions on there, and you've got words, and you've got the gifts and the shadows, and the common programs that the archetypes tend to suffer, although they're not exclusive to that. But it gives you a whole lot of clues to go along with that reading. So if anybody wants to take me up on that before tomorrow, when that bonus is still available, then you can do that at this link, and it's also in the notes below.
Beth series is a beautiful example of this. If you thought that you were just the trickster archetype, and you fully embodied everything that was the trickster archetype, and none of the other archetypes in any other way, you rejected those as a person, could you imagine what a stunted, weird person that would be? It would be a super weird dude. You wouldn't even want to hang out with them. I mean, it'd be interesting for like a night, but you're like, and it doesn't matter which archetype it is. You understand that you as a person embody all of them, and you go through transitional phases throughout life. And then at the end of it, what you really want to be is a person that can access each one of these archetypes and make use of them dependent on the situation. So knowing what the time is, and knowing what the season and what's going on, you understand that I'm going to embody this now because this is what's happening. And so this will be very beneficial to me as a whole, because I'm not really tied to any of them. I'm all of them, but I'm none of them.
Right. And people don't realize that when you reject an archetype, when you just say, oh, I'm the trickster and that's it, and everybody else get away, it doesn't go away. It expresses unconsciously. It doesn't go away. You can't take from the whole, right? The whole is still going to be whole. If you go into denial, it's like, okay, now that's going to be your enemy.
Yep.
That's going to show up as your enemy, and pain and suffering and unnecessary pain and suffering, maybe unnecessary death. Trying to kill an archetype. That's why I almost died 25 years ago or more. Right? I was trying to kill my rebel archetype, and I hear I have a rebel card deck coming to me. Shout out to Billing Tunnel there. They got my number, and so maybe I'll end up doing a rebel reading at some point as well.
The rebel is a perfect example. Sometimes it's good to be the rebel. Sometimes it is. I myself was very anarchist as a person and rebel against things regularly. But is the rebel archetype, like when, let's say I need to go down and get the cow and deal with the alpacas, and it's shearing time, is the rebel archetype useful for me? Or is that the person I need to be right then? Or is it the guy that's going to lead things and keep the animals calm and make them feel safe and comforted and has control of the situation? Like everything here is working as it should, and that person, or am I one of the cogs inside of that? Because sometimes you're the Indian, sometimes you're the chief. Like, it's just life. Like, so, access all of that, but learning about yourself and your reactions in them. Like Beth said, don't reject yourself. Just start making use of those different things in the times that it's worthy. You know what? Sometimes it's good to be the trickster. It is. Sometimes you don't want to. They take advantage of your own honesty, of how much you feel loyal and as a person. Sometimes it's not good to, as a heathen, we're not like the Christians where it's be honest all the time. I'm honest with the people I need to be honest with. The people that I'm friends with, that I love and are my family right here, these people right here, I'm insanely honest with. If you're somebody that's not necessarily aligned with me and against me, oh no, I feel no compunction to be honest with you. In fact, it'll probably, if I tell you things that I'm honest about, you're plotting and planning over there and going to hurt me. That seems very stupid to me. That don't seem smart at all. That seems very counterintuitive, in fact. So,
I agree. Yeah, be yourself, but be selective with where you're going to give of your gifts. And some people might see me as really guarded. I was saying the other day in a stream, but I'm not guarded with the right people. Why would I be? Yeah. I don't want to be guarded, but there is necessary at times. But that also doesn't mean that I have to, because of that, suppress myself. That would just be in the case where somebody was really surrounded by all the wrong people. And they always had to be guarded. And they always had to. And then what you cover, you transmit. What you cover, you transmit. Right. This is something people don't realize. They're like, oh, I don't want anybody to see my whatever it is. And
you can't be on that without existing in that polarity. Straight out. You've got it. This is something I try to explain to new pagans. Like the first thing pagans, when they become a new pagan or a new heathen, and they're anti-church. So now you're doing all the opposite things. Well, you understand that you have to really pay attention to the church to be that opposite of the church. Like, I don't let the church decide what I'm doing. So guess what? Because of that, some of the things I do align with the church quite a bit. Some of them don't. It doesn't matter to me because I'm not in that polarity anymore. I don't need to be opposite of them. So guess what? They in no way control me anymore. Like, it's only when I was still being controlled by them when I was opposite of them, because I have to be opposite of them. So their move, I have to move. You move left, I move right. Well, you controlled me.
Exactly. I know that's the thing. People have not learned the right reference point. They're always picking some reference point that they don't like, and then they can bounce all their shit off of you and waste your time and waste your life. I'm on a rant now, right? It's like the end of life. Go find some other, maybe yourself, maybe your own inner world, your purpose, your mission, to be the reference point to bounce the shit off of, right? Like, anyway, yeah.
And it's interesting because you need that action. You need those people, just like you need your heart to hit hard up here on the little chart, so it'll hit hard down here. You need that. You want a good hard charge, but you want to be the dude that's taking advantage of both sides. You don't want to take a side in that. You don't want to be like, oh, I really like topside. I hope topside wins. No, you don't. You want it to go down 2 again and you don't do that. So
what a fantastic metaphor. Boom. Right? I'm going to use that in my talk for Anarchapulco. Right?
Yes,
that's exactly
absolutely.
That's exactly it. Yeah, I'll quote you just once though. Well, Mr. Ben Balderson, it's been fantastic to be here. Is there anything that you want to share with people? I'll grab your links again to your channel where you're doing some debating and other stuff. Anything else you want to point people towards?
No, there's kind of, I'm having to just live life right now. We've had a lot of stuff go on in the last year and a half, and I put a lot into, the stuff I was, the community already, and which isn't me complaining in any way. I loved it. And, but I just had to step back and live life again and get my world back into where I need it to be. Had personal things go on, but we are doing Deliberating Dog-Faced Dudes. Everybody come on over and check it out. If you want to debate, we're having a hard time finding people to debate us. So if you want to help us do that, kick anybody you want to debate us, or you personally want to come debate us. We're a pretty weird, diverse group. You don't have to debate me necessarily. My rear diff is still down. I got it together. It's so perfect. I was so mad, bro. And my rear differential to the truck, because I do so much hauling of so much weight on my truck, and I literally tore the bolts on the carrier in this rear differential. Well, it's a weird setting because it's got to be set at 20 foot pounds, or I mean inch pounds, not foot pounds. Normally everybody does everything in foot pounds. This is inch pounds, and it's got to be while it's rolling. Well, this is supposed to also set the depth of the pinion, so that's where the gears are meshing, and they're supposed to mesh at a very specific way. So we had it didn't turn out right, and I pull too much weight. It's got to mesh perfect. So we ordered a crush sleeve eliminator kit, which means that I have to just gap it right with shims, but then it doesn't ever change. You can't mess it up. That thing doesn't move, and it's actually a better system because that crush sleeve, if you have a lot of weight and you put it in reverse, it can sometimes crush that crush sleeve. So that's a pain in the ass, but it is what it is. So we ordered a crush sleeve eliminator on the internet, and now we're waiting on that, and then we'll have the monster going again.
Very good. Thanks for that update. I hear you're working on that in the midst of an earthquake. If that was the same.
Yeah. Oh, Ryan here and I were under the truck, and the truck just started doing this, and Brian screams, "Why is the truck rocking?" And we both come flying out, and I came out the back and he came out the side, and I was looking at this trailer, and I'm like, "Why is that trailer rocking?" And I look over at the Suburban, and I'm like, "Why is that rocking?" And then all of a sudden the big earthquake hit, and it felt like that threw me in the air, and I could see my truck. I have it on cement blocks because our initial thought is that the bull or the cows, despite what people would think, they're really honestly kind of weird creatures, and they're funny, they're goofy, and anything you're doing, they come over and they want to fuck with it, and they want to see what you're doing. And like, if you build something, I swear I could literally just walk out, dig a hole, put a post in it, kicked it down, walk away. Within an hour, them cows would be over there pushing it, checking it out, rubbing against it, trying to knock it over. Like, it's just what they do. And so we assumed it was them pushing up against the truck, and it wasn't them. And then we, like I said, that second one, because there was two big earthquakes back to back, like happened almost at the same time. One was just north of us and one was just south, and they met right here. And that was the one where I literally thought I was going to leave my feet, like I was getting chucked into the air. I was like, "Wah!" And like I said, we have the trucks blocked up because of the cows, but I could literally see this much gap on the truck as it bounced. Like, I was like, "Wow. Oh my God." And we were all under the truck, when that whole process started, which made us not real happy to get under the truck for a few days.
Exactly. Well, I'm glad you guys are okay after that. And thank you so much for joining today. I totally appreciate the conversation. As always, it's enlightening. It's full of life. And
Yes.
and it came from a place where there was misunderstanding. I just simply wished you happy fake New Year, and then you said life comes from destruction and death, and I'm like, oh, there's a love stream right there.
And that started because as a heathen, and this is actually a practice we still carry forward to today. So nobody wonders why we have New Year's Eve or Christmas Eve and we start the celebration the eve before, that's because as a heathen, that's when the day started. And and winter started, our year, New Year started with winter, because the death and destruction leads to the life of the next cycle.
There you go. There you go. Beautiful. My idea died. My little chuckle. I won't get that anymore. But now I have the truth.
Love you guys.
Yeah. Love you too, Ben. Have a great rest of your day.
Love you, Beth.
Okay.
Thanks for having me on.
Okay, you're very welcome. I will play us out with one of my son's extras. I'm still leaning on him, trying to get some more. And I just wanted to make sure also and let people know that if you haven't considered to join the House of Free Will, that opportunity is open. I do a weekly snippet video there on different topics, and they can be quite personal and behind the scenes. And so if anybody would like to join, I do ask for a donation in exchange, but as little as $3 a month. So for everything that people get, weekly fellowship meetings, now I'm doing Satsang Sunday, where we're listening to something that really is about that conversation about truth, so we can bring our own attention to it, so we can see life for itself and enjoy that and thrive in that. So that's there, and there's a whole library of workshops and things going on. Lots of good things and some great people as well. So I'm about to jump on a snippet right now. I have to get going. Let me cue up this. Forgive me of the clunkiness. I am not the most refined, but I just like to go and do the thing and show the thing. And let me make sure this is actually the beginning. That helps. All right, everyone. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. So much love to you. Hello, Michelle, on the way out. And thank you, the Accidental Alchemist, and everybody who came today. Lots of love for now.